Here is a review of factoring. To factor, the process of expressing a polynomial as a product. Reminder, product means in terms of multiplication. A factor, a polynomial that can be used to express a larger polynomial as a product. Again, that means in terms of multiplication. A factorization, an expression that names the polynomial as a product. Now, these all seem very similar and closely related, but there is a big difference. To factor is a verb, an action, it's you doing something. A factor is a noun, it's an item, it's an individual thing. Okay, so we discussed the difference between what it means to factor, a factor, and a factorization. But let's go back to the basics. What does that really mean? So we are going to factor the number 20. If I look at the number 20 and go back to a factor tree, that means I want to think of two numbers that multiply to give you 20. Well, you may come up with 4 and 5. Now 5 is a prime number, so I circle it, meaning it is done factoring, it cannot break down. But 4 is not prime, so I think of two numbers that multiply to give me 4, and I get 2 times 2. Now 2 is prime, so I circle it, and those are done factoring. Now what we just did, this whole action process, was to factor. It was a process. We broke the number 20 down. Now these individual pieces of 2, 2, and 5, these are your factors. They are the individual pieces that made up the original value. Now, I could write 20, but I could represent 20 as 2 times 2 times 5. And when it's written in that form, that is known as a factorization. Hopefully that makes a little more sense. Okay, so now let's move on to finding a GCF, or finding the greatest common factor. So looking at example A, I have three terms. I have 4x cubed, 12x squared, and 8x. To identify the GCF, you want to compartmentalize. First, let's look at the numbers. I have a 4, a 12, and an 8. What is the largest number that can divide evenly into a 4, a 12, and an 8? 2 would work, but is there a bigger number? And you probably are thinking of 4. Now we're going to focus on the variables. We have x cubed, which is x times x times x. 12x squared, which x squared is x times x. And we have 8x, which is just an x. Now the greatest common factor means what do each of them have in common? Notice, they all have just one x. So you would say your GCF for this particular problem is 4x. Now looking at B, we have 12x squared and we have negative 6x cubed. Well, let's look at the numbers. I have 12 and I have a negative 6. What is the largest number that can divide evenly into both 12 and negative 6? A 2 would work, a 3 would work, but 6 would be the largest. Now, to decide if it's going to be a positive or a negative, we look at the signs. Since they are not both negative, we will say the GCF will remain a positive 6. Now let's look at the variables. X squared is x times x. X cubed is x times x times x. We want to know the most they both have in common. They both have 1x and they both have a second x, which means they're both made up of x times x, or we can simplify that and say that's the same thing as 6x squared. That is the GCF of both of those terms.